Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Oh, okay.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
To the flag of the
of the United States of America
United States of America,
and to the
and
republic
to the republic
for which it
for which
stands,
it stands,
one nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay.
Oops.
It's really nice to see all the beautiful smiling faces tonight. Kate, would you do the roll call, please?
Certainly. Joseph Britton,
Present.
Rachel Chalesky,
Here.
Kate Canetta, here. Gladys Cooper,
Here.
Lauren Daly,
Here.
Joseph De Silva,
Here.
Catherine Hodgson,
Here.
Richard Janelli,
Here.
Kathleen Molinaro,
Here.
Albert Russo,
Here.
Amy Spallina.
Here.
Everyone's here.
Okay. We have everyone here. We're going to move on down the agenda. Dr. Sayal, do you have any recognitions?
Not this evening.
Okay. Kate, will you read the strip for public participation?
The board welcomes public participation and asks that comments be limited to 3 minutes. The public may offer objective comments of school operations and programs that concern them. The board will not permit any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about Board of Education personnel and students, nor against any person connected with the Danbury Public School System. Due to the unique nature of the COVID-19 crisis and the limitations of technology, members of the public who are Danbury residents are invited to send brief comments and questions via email in advance to dps_public comment_BOE@danbury.k12.ct.us.
Thank you so very much. Sandra, you want to start with our comments?
Yes, ma'am. First one is from Lisa Ruffles, parent of 3 school-age children. After a very long and challenging school year in regards to COVID, it appears things are starting to head in the right direction. With Governor Lamont's most recent announcement, I would hope the Danbury district is looking to expand on our current hybrid schedule as soon as possible. Larger districts such as Hartford have made a decision to return to 5 days starting March 1st for pre-K through 9. They are keeping 10 to 12 on a hybrid schedule for now. Other districts such as Norwalk are already operating with their elementary students in person full-time. We should be implementing a similar plan for getting our K through 5 students back on a 5-day schedule for families who choose to return, and then hopefully build from there. Between our hybrid schedule, quarantines, and snow days, these kids are barely back on any real level to have the impact we need. We missed our opportunity to return in the fall, and I hope we don't make the same mistake again. It very much concerns me that our efforts to close the educational gap has only widened this past year. Have you seen an increase in students performing below grade level? If yes, what is being discussed and or planned around getting students adequately prepared to pass by the end of the school year? Lastly, our district received grant money through the Emergency School Relief Fund under the CARES Act. How will that money be used in helping us not only recover, but also meet ongoing CDC guidelines and plan for future pandemics yet to be seen? Allison Bennett Casa. I again ask that the Danbury Board of Ed evaluate and find a way to get the children into school. Data from surrounding districts, the country, and even now worldwide does not support the continued remote education and rather supports in-person education and schools being low risk for exposure. My elementary kids are suffering academically and socially. Give us the freedom and choice to put them back in full time. Stephen and Paraskevi Runtos. We need to get our children back in school full time this year for their emotional, mental, and educational health. We have 3 children in the Danbury Public School System, a freshman in high school, a 6th grader, and 1st grader. So we are witnessing what is happening to our children across the 3 school levels. We have been patiently and consistently doing our part to protect our families and our community. Recently, our own family's collective mental health has deteriorated, and we believe that the lack of in-person education is driving much of it. One of our sons, a high honor student, is suddenly unmotivated and disinterested in online learning, even though he is engaged when he goes in person. Both of our sons tell us that they are bored with remote learning and try to find other ways to occupy themselves during online class time. We have personally seen the negative impact that this detachment is having on their willingness to learn and, more importantly, their base of education, which they will need to build on in future years. We do not think that the Danbury Public School hybrid model is meeting the needs of our children, and we question why there hasn't been more discussion about going back to full in-person instruction. The Board of Education would be negligent in their responsibility to our children if they do not give families the choice of full-time in-person instruction during the school year. Danbury Board of Ed needs to explain to us using specific COVID statistics why most other large school systems in the state, including Stanford and Hartford, have gone back full-time in person, but we have not heard of any plans proposed by the Board of Ed for this to happen in Danbury. Again, we need to get our children back in school full-time this year for their emotional, mental, and educational health. Next parent is Teresa, no last name. What is the plan for the special education students to attend in person 4 to 5 days a week, especially those who have been identified to attend in person 4 days back in October? Many surrounding districts are already at 4 to 5 days. It is critical for some in this population to have limited interaction and or those students who require supports that are just too difficult virtually and creates frustration. Kathy Snow. A lot has happened in the past few weeks. I would first like to extend my sincerest congratulations to Dr. Sal. It has been a pleasure to know you, and I hope you enjoy a very much deserved and well-earned retirement. I would also like to mention that I am in support of the school budget that will be presented by the City Council, and was happy to see the Committee on Community Outreach has met a few times and is working to put together a one-page summary type document of the budget highlights. Separate from the budget, I would like to request that some of the CARES money be used for long-term fixes versus short-term pandemic solutions. Things like water fountains with refilling stations and light sensors in rooms. A few years ago, I asked about removing the hallway doors into bathrooms, similar to the mall or the movie theater. Of course, there would need to be privacy partitions from the hallway, and there would still be stalls with doors, but removing the hallway doors would eliminate a physical touch point. This could also help reduce vaping. I asked the board to please look into using some of this money toward long-term benefits. My next question is regarding getting students back in school. Using round figures, about half the student population is fully remote and the other half is hybrid. Of the hybrid population, we are at 25% of students in the buildings for blue cohort and orange cohort. Can we please get to the point where both cohorts are in the building at the same time, which would be the 50% capacity that the district submitted as the plan to the state back in July? I believe the plan allows for 50% of students to be in school, as it is only had two groups. Group A with live instruction of 50% of students in school, and Group B distance learning with 50% of students at home. Our current model of 25% of students in buildings was from a surge in COVID back in July. We seem to be going in the right direction as the numbers of new confirmed cases of COVID from the state website. Kathy O'Dowd has said in prior meetings that the spread of COVID is not due to being in school. I believe she has been tracking all schools since the start, including the Catholic schools, and science has shown that COVID is not spread from being in school. With everyone wearing masks and using desk shields, as well as the numerous other strategies in place, I would hope the district can flex and get more students back in school, especially since there has been so much learned about COVID. Now is the time for the district to move in the right direction and get our kids back in. My final question is, what is the plan for next fall? I expect that 100% of students will be in the building full-time for a full school day, especially since all teachers and staff are able to get the vaccine. I am asking this as we all know how quickly time passes, and my understanding of policy P6114.81, the emergency suspension of policy during pandemic under temporary powers granted superintendent of schools, item number 2, the last sentence ends with, the authority will remain in effect for the duration of the 2021 school year or until repealed by the school board. It seems as the board is going to keep this in place for the duration of the year, so I am formally asking the board to begin discussion now to ensure all students are back in school full-time in the fall. Katie Williams, given the dramatic decrease of cases here in Danbury, in conjunction with the announcement that teachers will be vaccinated starting March 1st, I would like to know when the Board of Ed plans to have students return to 5 days of school instruction. Other districts across the state are using the current data, proving that schools are a safe place for our teachers and children. to support their decision to bring students back into school full-time. For instance, Hartford will be welcoming back students in grades K through 9 starting this coming Monday, March 1st, for full in-person learning. As a point of reference, Hartford is currently seeing a rate of 30.5 cases of COVID-19 per 100,000, which is very similar to that of Danbury, which is at a rate of 30.2 cases per 100,000. In addition, districts such as Norwalk, Bethel, Brookfield, and New Fairfield have all been successfully running 5 days of in-school instruction at the K-5 levels, with minimal transmission being seen within their school buildings. Furthermore, Newtown is full-time and for K through 12, and New Milford will be transitioning their students back in full-time starting on March 1st. Danbury hesitated in September when all but 2 districts in the state began the year in the hybrid model. I do not want to see Danbury again make a misstep in their decision by not following the guidance and reopening at minimum K through 5 days a week in-person instruction soon. The CDC's newest guidelines urge districts to bring a minimum of K through 5 students back full-time when community transmissions is moderate to low, which would be a rate of 10 to 49 cases per 100,000. Again, Danbury is currently seeing a transmission of 30.2 cases per 100,000. These indicators put us well within the guidelines set by the CDC to bring, at minimum, our K through 5 students back to school full-time. As a parent, I was struck by the dramatic change in my son's personality and overall mood when he was able to return to school in the hybrid model. He is a loving and fun-spirited kid, and it wasn't until then that the negative effects of the extended time away from became fully transparent. After his first day back, he was chatty and giddy. He had a renewed passion for his work and wanted to share everything that he had learned. The days that are remote are even harder because, in his words, it's so much more fun when I'm in school. When they went remote because of weather, my son had a complete breakdown because he missed his in-person days. This is traumatizing to watch as a parent and completely unnecessary, since the guidelines show that he should be in school. He comes from a household with 2 parents that are in the field of education. He has the full attention and support of myself, who is a former Danbury teacher, and still he has struggled mentally and academically. There is no substitution for in-person learning, and given the downward trends in cases, the low transmission of the virus within school buildings, the teachers' accessibility to the vaccine, and the guidance of other towns in the state, I implore you to bring our students back in for full time. Ms. Cooper, I am just refreshing to make sure that there are no other comments. And that would be it for tonight.
Thank you, Sandra. You do a beautiful job of bringing those comments to the board. So we move on down the agenda. Before we move, Kate, would you do a personal favor for the group? Would you go back and read our mission statement and our 2021 district goals? Because I think that has sort of been put on the wayside for us, and I think we need a refresher.
Of course. The mission statement: Danbury Public Schools, in partnership with families and the community, provides transformational learning experiences designed to nurture thoughtful and prepared graduates. 2021 district goals: Goal 1, growth in student learning and achievement and college and career readiness for all students. Goal 2, family and community engagement. Goal 3, fiscal responsibility and planning for growth. Goal 4, professionalism, accountability, and organizational learning.
Thank you so very much, Kate. Now, while you're here, could you go ahead and we can do the consent calendar?
Certainly. I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approves the items on the consent calendar, Exhibit 21-18 through 21-22, as recommended.
Could I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Amy seconded. Okay, Kate, would you do the roll call?
Oh, can we have discussion? I just have a comment.
Yes.
I just want to say that I'm thankful for the attachments in the minutes, particularly when it comes to the budget presentation and the budget detail. But there are 2 different versions of the school budget history, pages 13 and 53 in our agenda packet. And I'm just wondering if we could get just whatever is the correct version of that to us sometime. And I have a third version in the binder from last year. It just, they don't line up.
Or, I'm sorry, there's two different versions, Rachel?
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at it now. Okay.
There's the one in the budget presentation in the deck. And then in the budget detail further down on page 53, just different numbers for last year. I know last year was kind of, it was a different circumstance, but I just would like, what's correct there.
Yeah, it's for last year. Yeah, I'll make the correction and have it reissued as part of the board packet.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for noticing that.
Thank you, Courtney. Any other questions or discussion? Moving on, Kate?
Yeah,
Yes, Richard?
yeah, I don't see anything that has, it makes reference to through 21, 22. I'm not seeing, I beg your pardon, I had the wrong version. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kate, will you do the roll call?
Joe Burton,
Aye.
Rachel Chalesky,
Aye.
Kate Canetta, aye. Gladys Cooper,
Aye.
Lauren Daly,
Aye.
Joe De Silva,
Aye.
Catherine Hodgson,
Aye.
Rich Janelli,
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro,
Aye.
Al Russo,
Aye.
Amy Spallino.
Aye.
Okay,
Motion
we have
passes.
11 in favor, so the motion so passed. Thank you. Our educational staff representative reports. Do we have anyone from NEA? Aaron? No?
I don't see her.
Dr. Zaletta? No, she's here?
I'm here.
Okay,
Thank you. So,
thank you.
oh, you're welcome. So what I did to report out this time was to ask all the administrators to share with me some of their silver linings with all of this madness and chaos. I think it's important to always focus on some of the positive things that have been happening. So I'm going to share with you what was shared with me. First, I'm going to start with the curriculum folks. The ESL supervisor, Mrs. Swift, shared with me that despite the challenging year, the K-5 ESL bilingual staff have been able to consistently meet our weekly for professional development with technology, new curriculum implementation, and assessment alignment. Teachers have been able to meet in small groups to strategize and determine best practices when teaching English learners. And SIOP coaches have been able to assist teachers by joining synchronous sessions to demonstrate the SIOP model, interactive teaching methods with remote learners, and more. The department has been able to tighten up with curricular needs and be on the same page with extra time allotted for planning and professional development. On the student side, due to all of the above, English learners K-5 have been able to participate actively in remote learning. They have learned a tremendous amount of technological skills, and our youngest learners are able to access the Google Meets, Google Classroom, type, click on links, and more. Our attendance in ESL classes have been high, and students are speaking more than ever due to the implementation of our new curriculum. On the math end, our supervisor, Dr. Mead, shared that there's been a true focus on the standards in mathematics at the K-5 level, as well as finally slimming the standards. They have weekly grade level meetings with 2 math coaches that have provided more focused PD with teachers than ever before. The 6 STEM coaches have worked tirelessly to provide coherent lessons and appropriate practice for approximately 250 teachers and 5,000 students at the elementary level. She could not be more proud to be a part of this incredible team of instructional leaders. Also, the ability to integrate science, which is near and dear to my heart, this year has been a huge silver lining at the K-5 level, and the integration has increased engagement for our teachers and students. In speaking with the elementary principals, Principal of Pembroke, Dr. Eppel, shared that after completing her mid-year teacher evaluation conferences, that teachers overwhelmingly reflected that they had very close relationships with their students and families this year. In fact, they said that they have never been closer to their students and their families. And they're also reporting a stronger sense of grade level community across families as teacher assignments had to change. Teachers continue to be amazed at the technology skills and flexibility that our elementary students are demonstrating. She's amazed at the I can't get that word right tonight. technology skills and flexibility that our teachers are demonstrating too. She also shared that 2/3 of her teachers have taken the Yale SEL course and loved it. Many have commented that they not only solidified the foundation of their beliefs in SEL, but it's also helped them personally. Students are demonstrating a comfort level and ability to express themselves appropriately and accurately while identifying effective coping strategies. You commented that the grade level teams in building and across the district have never been so aligned and on track with curriculum implementation, and collaboration is high. Lastly, she shared that their lunch waves, with only a maximum of 36 students in each, provide students the opportunity to enjoy more peaceful and calm socialization time. Principal of Shelter Rock, Ms. Marshall, had shared that they have increased their efforts to celebrate students. They've maintained their monthly Student of the Month program, where teachers select a student and then the class has a morning meeting to announce the selected student. The teacher reads a summary of why the student was selected, and then the parents are given the teacher's summary. In addition, all our students, hybrid and DL, have been enjoying Spirit Days twice a month. Students are photographed, observing all protocols, during these events for their school yearbook. Teachers are being creative with mass breaks for the students with games like Simon Says or I Spy to provide the children with social interactions and fun. They also have teachers who are coordinating movie nights with permission of the parents, and teachers spend a Friday or Saturday night virtually watching a movie. And they also include all siblings in the household. Principal of Sadley Ruff, Mr. Serlich, shared that at Sadley Ruff, the parent communication has been a top priority for all staff. All of the teachers have been using many different apps, emails, and live meets to communicate with parents. All of the hard work that is happening in classrooms and updates about our school are being communicated instantly throughout the day. The silver lining is that he feels there is more parent communication than ever before and feels that he's established a new way to keep parents more informed and be more a part of the classroom. Everyone has been utilizing technology more than ever before and has helped all of them see different sides of their families. Principal of Millridge Primary, Ms. Tarsi, shared that one of the things that her school is doing a great job of is that they're getting their families involved despite not having to have them come into the school. Some ways they've been able to do this is through virtual attendance, so that they don't have to worry about childcare and that they can attend from work and attend more flexibly. They've had special conversations or guest speakers at their PTO meetings, and they have had fantastic attendance. They did presentations on reopening and the importance of attendance and how attendance is monitored in the in-person and virtual environments. And lastly, a presentation addressed, Can I Send My Child to School? This presentation was about when it's okay to send your child in and when you should keep them at home. It focused on sick day guidelines, quarantine rules, and who to contact for more information. She shared that her PTO attendance has hovered somewhere between 30 and 65 families on a given month, which is considerably higher than years past. They've also been working with their families to plan fun and engaging events for students both during school and after to try and bring our students together. They're doing a great job at celebrating special events and building community despite the challenges. Some of the things that they've done are virtual story nights with staff reading to the kids, virtual family bingo night, bi-monthly Spirit Days, dress up day for the 100th day of school, Kindness Week, and a virtual holiday concert that they live streamed and watched together as a school at the same time. She said that they're really making the most of the situation, still working very hard to build in memories and school experiences for our students. They're also trying to build a welcoming school environment despite the fact that we cannot physically invite our families in. At King Street Primary, Principal Dr. Rocco shared that she thought a silver lining was that the student independence and confidence in their use of technology is growing exponentially. She stated that she loves hearing the student comments to the teacher. In grade 3, a student commented, Miss B, when you come into my breakout room, can you be sure to mute because I'm going to be making my Flipgrid. A grade 1 student shared, Miss W, I couldn't get into my special. Can you pop the link in the chat for me again? A second grade student commented, when the teacher was having some tech difficulty, said, hold please, and started humming the Jeopardy theme song. He commented that with the hybrids, the students eating in the classroom with the teacher present has helped build relationships, and great conversations are taking place in these small group settings that would not have been possible in a larger group. King Street Intermediate Principal Dr. Hislop shared that King Street Intermediate celebrates a 600% increase of parent attendance in our virtual parent and family engagement nights, fantastic math game night in January, and rally for reading in February. One more night is planned in March, and information about their nights can be found on their campus website using the Intermediate tab. Special education supervisor Ms. Campbell shared that a handful of our neediest self-contained elementary students returned to school with a no tolerance for wearing a mask. Through staff collaboration and family support, the students are now wearing their masks during the school day. Their tolerance was built up over time as the school days passed. The staff maintained expectations and the students rose to the challenge. At Danbury High, Assistant Principal Ms. Daniels shared that a silver lining was that enabling student voice, connection, and leadership during their SEL times with the DHS documentary series. Also, the development of the DHS virtual peer tutoring to support students with distance learning outside of school hours, and the re-engagement and return of chronically absent students through teacher and administrator outreach outside of the school day. Assistant Principal Dr. Roy shared that something good that has happened this year is that teachers and administrators are more adept at using technology in virtual environments to differentiate learning for students. Teachers have developed lessons that allow students to progress at an individual rate while gaining personalized feedback and time with teachers through regular class time and flex periods at the high school. Principal DiNardo at Reach Endeavor shared that students are admitting they are glad that they are in school and that they're working to improve. At the middle school level, Westside Principal Dr. LeBanca shared that they have been able to use Wednesdays to host their normal school-wide events, the Peace Poster, Invention Convention, Science and Engineering Expo, History Day, and Geo Challenge. They have created a system for evaluating projects live with students and community volunteers as judges. We have successfully interviewed all 750 Westside students, and we complement our events with a public-facing website and wacky and zany opening and award ceremonies on YouTube. At Broadview, Assistant Principal Rinaldi shared that through challenging times, this has also brought some positives. Through the use of technology, she has seen more students responding during lessons. Students who in the past may have been too shy to respond in front of the entire class are now responding in Pear Deck, Desmos, chat boxes, and other online platforms. Not only do the students get a safe place to respond, the teachers are also receiving in-the-moment formative assessment information. In addition to increased student engagement, she has also seen increased parent communication. Teachers are communicating more frequently with parents and have been using apps like Talking Points to help navigate language barriers. At Rogers Park, I'd like to share that we were able to participate in the American Bar Association Diversity Outreach Program this year. This is a program that in the past has only occurred in a major city that the ABA holds its annual conferences, like Chicago or New York. Due to the COVID, the program was expanded across the country. I was connected with one of the judges, who is one of my teacher's aunts, who is a retired judge, and we hosted 5 diverse female judges last Wednesday for a 90-minute session with our Social Justice Club. These students learned about the 3 branches of government, the rule of law, and very important, judicial independence. They broke out into small groups and had the opportunity to ask judges questions, and then we got back together in a whole group for a final Q&A session. Both the students and the judges enjoyed the experience, and that we are looking forward to working with them again in the future. In fact, one of the judges was from Connecticut, and she and I have already started brainstorming how we can work together in the future, both virtually and in person, with not only our students, but also our parent community by hosting a naturalization ceremony at our school. That's a lot. I'm sorry. I know it's probably more than 3 or 4 minutes, but I think it's good to focus on positives, and I appreciate being able to share that with all of you.
And thank you for bringing such positive information to us. Does anyone have any question? Thank you again. Okay, move on down to our students. Are any our students in the audience? Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I just have a few things to say. Since the last time we spoke, as you all know, DHS has gone into a hybrid model. Students were able to enter the building for the first time since March of 2020. We are so excited by how well it is going, but the weather does seem to be getting in the way. Danbury High School boys track and field begins in 4 weeks, and students can contact Mr. Murray for more information on how to try out. The Danbury High School PTO has been putting together an Adopt a Senior program where parents and community members will be assigned a senior to send a small gift each month until June. During the large snowstorm in the beginning of February, Dr. Tucci put together a snowman contest where students submitted images of their snowman as a historical figure, and she received over 20. The History Honor Society is putting together a project based around student experience during the pandemic. They're asking students that send in images, videos, or documents that outline how they dealt with isolation. This project is in partnership with the Danbury Historical Society. And that's all I have for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Okay. Have anyone from ACE?
Good evening, Board of Ed members, Cabinet, and community members. Thank you for allowing me to represent and speak on behalf of the ACE Alternative Center for Excellence. I would like to remind you all that the ACE Showcase website, which is under design, will highlight student writings, paintings, and all things creative that has been created and is being managed by Joanne Tolles. Joanne and her poetry students are already planning our annual Spring Coffee House, which will be a venue for students and staff to read original pieces of poetry, display artwork, and host musical performances. We would like our creativity to be on full display for our Alternative Center for Excellence YouTube channel. ACE would like to publicly acknowledge and congratulate our students of the week for the week of February 8th to the 12th, Kat Cruz and Samantha Seguencia. ACE would like to acknowledge Tyler Schroeder, Jen Sedano, Jason Llanos, and Brian Galazza for earning honors for semester 1. Our high honor students were Josh Porlin, Chris Pive, Kristen Villani, Spencer Robbins, and Jalen Batista. And congratulations to Brianna Villani for earning distinguished honors. Lastly, Kyle Tricola and his students have organized an ACE Care Kit drive with donations being dropped off this week, February 22nd to 26th. ACE is collecting donations of new socks, individually packaged snacks, hand warmers, disposable face masks, gallon Ziploc bags, bar soap, Band-Aids, wet naps, and mini water bottles. Drive-through donations can be dropped in the ACE Care Kit bin at the bottom of the steps at the entrance parking lot side. Thank you all for allowing me to share the great things happening with our ACE family. Stay safe, everyone, and remain ACE strong.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. If there's no questions for any of our students, we're going to move on down the agenda. We're going to ask Mr. Joe Da Silva to do action item A.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I apologize. I froze up there for a minute.
Yes. No problem.
Make a motion on action item 9A, January 2021 Operating Results and Analysis General Funds Grants Project. Motion that the Board of Education approve the January 2021 Operating Results and Analysis General Funds Grants Projects in accordance with 21-23. It's on begins on page 60 in the packet.
Thank you, Joe. Could I hear a second?
I'll second. This is Kate.
Okay, Kate. Are there any questions or discussion or any questions to Courtney? Seeing none, to do the roll call, Kate?
Joe Burton?
Aye.
Rachel Chalesky?
Aye.
Kate Canetta? Aye. Gladys Cooper?
Aye.
Lauren Daly?
Aye.
Joe Da Silva?
Aye.
Catherine Hodgson?
Aye.
Rich Janelli?
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro?
Aye.
Al Russo?
Aye.
Amy Spallino?
Aye.
So we have 11 in favor and the motion is so carried. Thank you. Rachel, you want to do policy action item C?
Sure. I move that the Board of Education accept for first reading. Oh, did you say B or C, Gladys? We're on B, yes?
We're on B, but I thought we shifted that one. Am I wrong?
We just
No, that is the correct policy, Kate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion that the Board of Education accept for first reading policy 1312.2, community relations / appeals as recommended by the policy committee, exhibit 21-24.
Did I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Amy seconded. Any questions concerning the policy?
I have a couple
Yes,
questions,
Joe.
Gladys, if I could. Thank you. I think this policy is good. I'm all for being able to gripe to your elected officials and your district. I just had a couple issues just with the language of it. I know it's just for first reading, but just for when it gets kicked back to the policy committee, I noticed that in the actual language of the policy, when it says like the superintendent shall review any complaint and conduct, it really doesn't put a burden on the district to review it or to conduct this investigation or whatever in a certain amount of time. So I would just recommend, just for efficiency of, our government or, our elected officials, to maybe see if it's possible to put in like within 10 days from the receipt of the complaint or something like that. And the language where it says the board may, but is under no obligation to review the policy, amend or refer the policy, et cetera. I don't really see the point in having, but is under no obligation to. I just feel the board already knows that they're under no obligation to amend any policy. So I just think that might unintentionally influence the board when reviewing the results from an investigation into a complaint about a policy. And just thirdly, and this is my last one, it says must be signed. And that kind of implies that a name should be attached. And I just wonder if it's possible to maybe allow people to give anonymous complaints, just because I think that, people may be afraid of retaliation against their child, or maybe it's even an employee that's giving some sort of complaint. So that's just kind of my recommendations back to the policy committee. So that's really all I had with that.
Mr. Watson? Mr. Watson, do you have any comments or for Mr. Britton?
Sure, Joe, number one, thanks for the comments. Joe, I can share with you in our committee, we did go back and forth about the fact that the board was or was not under any obligation. And I think the committee's intention in that line was just to make it clear to the community that it doesn't mean that by submitting a complaint that there's an obligation to change the policy. But your point is well taken. As a response, we don't have to, of course, as a board. I'm not talking about me. I'm not a board member, but right. The board does not have to change the policy. But I think the committee's concern was just wanted to make it clear to the community. Certainly, they have a responsibility to review the policies and any concerns that the community might have, that they were under no obligation. And I'm certainly happy to, bring this back to the committee for further discussion. I'm not sure how the rest of the committee feels about this one.
Yeah, if the intent was for the public to know that just a complaint doesn't necessarily mean that something's going to change, I think that's fine. I was just making sure that the board members understand that. And I'm not telling everybody knows we don't have to accept everything or change anything, but that was just my one fear, and thank you for clearing it up. I think
thank you,
Madam Chair. Can I just add one comment? Just to zoom out just a little bit on the discussion, there are lots of mandatory processes where we'll have to do investigations and complaints, things like bullying, Title IX violations. There's sexual harassment complaints. So we have a whole wealth of different kinds of patchworked policies that require us by law and by policy to go in and conduct investigations, to review the policies, to speak with the complainant, depending on the kind of area that we're in. This policy was intended to kind of plug one hole, which came out of, if we have other programs where something's going on in a program, maybe it's an after-school program, maybe it's a morning program, maybe it's adult ed, maybe it's somewhere else, and there's a concern by a parent either about tuition, whether the child's still enrolled in the program, whether they're booted out of the program, anything like that. We didn't have a policy to plug that gap that provided for a parent or a caregiver to kind of come into central office and have a conversation about that. And so part of this policy is really intended to plug that gap. So we have sort of all of these other policies by operation of law are doing a lot of what you're pointing out in terms of, statements, who's signing them, how long we have, what's the statutory timeline. This one is a little bit more mundane, if you will, because it's kind of hitting a different area where we just didn't have a policy. And so when we looked at it originally, what Kevin and I talked about was, if you have a complaint about your teacher or you don't like, something that's going on with your child, you always have an avenue to come into central office and talk with the assistant superintendent and or the superintendent. And this is intended to kind of provide that same avenue just in case.
Gotcha. Thanks, Kim.
Okay.
Any further discussion, comments?
Yeah, I would also just like to add that the base of the policy came as a recommendation from CABE, and we tweaked it with the help of all committee members. And, I'd just like to hear, I know Joe DeSilva, you had raised your hand, and some of that language, you helped us with. So,
I specifically added the line that the board's under no obligation, because while we know that, it's very important that the person filing the complaint know that in the first place while they're filing it, that we're not under any obligation, because the way it reads without that line, it doesn't really say that. And I think it needed to expressly say that we're not under any such obligation. Similarly, the fact that it needs to be signed was from CABE. And I'm never going to support a policy that allows an anonymous complaint under any circumstances ever, because anonymous complaints are how you get crackpot nonsense. I understand there is the risk of people being concerned about retribution and all that. I get that. But if you're not putting your name on a complaint, I can't take it seriously and I can't investigate it. So that's kind of where I step off on that. But the signing part was from CABE. That was part of the draft policy that we got from CABE.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Joe. I was going to come back and I saw that you have. Okay.
Thank you, both of the chairs.
Okay. Kate, will you do the roll call? If there are no other questions or discussion?
Sure thing. Excuse me. Joe Britton.
Aye.
Rachel Chalesky.
Aye.
Kate Canetta. Aye. Gladys Cooper.
Aye.
Lauren Daly.
Aye.
Joe DeSilva.
Aye.
Catherine Hodgson.
Aye.
Rich Janelli.
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro.
Aye.
Al Russo.
Aye.
Amy Spallino.
Aye.
We have all 11 people in favor. Thank you. The motion is so carried. Kathy Molinaro, will you do action item C?
Okay. Motion that the Board of Education accept for the first reading policy 6159, instruction special education as recommended by the policy committee 21-25.
Motion made by Kathy, second.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay. Any questions and discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Kate, would you do the roll call?
Of course. Joe Britton.
Aye.
Rachel Chalesky.
Aye.
Kate Canetta. Aye. Gladys Cooper.
Aye.
Lauren Daly.
Aye.
Joe DeSilva.
Aye.
Catherine Hodgson.
Aye.
Rich Janelli.
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro.
Aye.
Al Russo.
Aye.
Amy Spallino.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor, the motion is so carried. Lauren Daly, would you do the last action item D, please? Lauren?
Lauren, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. Hold on, I gotta open the
Okay,
other screen.
the very last action item, Lauren. You're so
I'll
quiet
get
half the
there.
time.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to get it. I can't find it. I cannot find Kara's
I'll
email.
read it if you want me to.
Sorry. Could you
Okay,
do that?
Catherine,
Thank you.
Okay.
go
All
ahead,
right.
Catherine.
No problem.
Sorry.
All right. I make a motion that the Board of Education accept the first reading policy 6171, instruction, special education as recommended by the policy committee 21-26, page 75.
Motion made by Catherine,
Second.
seconded
It's Joe.
by Joe.
It's Joe.
Okay. Joe.
DeSilva, sorry.
Okay. Okay. Any questions or discussion concerning these policy? Seeing none, Kate, will you do the roll call?
Certainly. Joe Britton?
Aye.
Rachel Chalesky?
Aye.
Kate Canetta? Aye. Gladys Cooper?
Aye.
Lauren Daly?
Aye.
Joe DeSilva?
Aye.
Catherine Hodgson?
Aye.
Rich Janelli?
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro?
Aye.
Al Russo?
Aye.
Amy Spallino?
Aye.
Motion so carried. We have all 11 board members in favor of the motion. Okay. I want to thank the policy committee along with Mr. Walson and everyone for getting together and bringing these policy forward to the board. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just information, you all know we do have our lobbyists, and I'm sure we're going to organize a meeting with our contingent, legislative contingency alone. But if you're interested in the CABE virtual day, you can see it's March 17th. Kara has information on signups and so forth, but if you have an interest for that, that's the date. I think that's St. Patty's Day, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that's the date chosen this year. You know, we're working with Ryan Bigham for our own session that we need to have with our contingent. The next section, I did send you a copy of a letter that we've drafted to the governor. I'm going to tell you very seriously, this does impact the cities. As you see in my letter, we represent just under 45% of the total number of students that are in Connecticut. Over 65% of indigent, those that are indigent. So we have a real need. And I think a few years back, the governor at the time decided over a lot of conversation, court cases, a way of assisting the cities and equalizing access to education. The modified DCS grant included groups that were very needy and were very difficult to fund within operational budgets, and put in a plan. And you know, our plan was a 10-year plan for Danbury. The governor's current position, if you take your time and look at it, we all know, in fact, one of the parents mentioned the ESSA money. The ESSA money coming to us was our conversation with the state was that it was to be used for items that would mitigate the pandemic impacts. Some of it could be construction, some of it could be life safety work, but majority should be spent on kids and closing gaps and focusing on standards that we were not approachable, or even possibly doing some PD work with our teachers. And that money should have been going that way. But the governor's taking advantage of it, whether or not we're required to do that. I guess in his position, he's indicating that that money could be used for operation. I will tell you that the State Department has asked us to put together an ESSA grant that was really focused on the intent, telling us that it may change, in the future. But that's how we're going to construct it. If you look at the three areas that we articulated in here, the regression from the equity principle, the ESSER money, and the fiscal cliff. I'll start with the end in mind with the fiscal cliff. I mean, most of you have been around long enough to know that one-time sources creates nothing but a tremendous disadvantage when that money does not come into the district any longer, which right now, our current budget, just under 6% of it is there just to turn the lights on. And that was to meet some cliffs that we've had over time with allocations that were, 1%, 2%. If this, in fact, budget goes through, you're going to be facing something 3 years down the road that is really terrible on the taxpayers in the town and of our children. And we've tried to bring that attention to the governor. We've asked for some private sessions to no avail, and took this course. I will also tell you that significant cliff is not boding well in Hartford with many legislators. But with that said, I think it's incumbent on this board to really express to our delegation the impact it's going to do on not just the education program, but if in fact that creates the cliff, your numbers are going to be, unless taxes are raised, we'll be losing staff and going to numbers that are right now are very high in classroom, which has led to some of our issues about returning to school. But I will tell you that that's a major problem. Not to mention the equity. There are towns that are gaining money when there are urban settings that are losing money. Very inconsistent, and we're not understanding why that's happening. So I just ask you patience. If you look at the $109 million that we're losing in these districts, and then trying to hold the ECS money for 2 years by pausing, does nothing but create havoc and equity for our kids in terms of equal access to a curriculum. Just not fair. The ESSER money for the board, we will put together a budget or a recommendation, let me use that, that's going to mitigate our pandemic loss, summer school, extending time. But I want you to know now, the State Department did come back to us and told us that if something happens to the governor's budget and we have to use those funds, we may have to recalibrate our budget, the ESSER money. So that may or may not happen. So I just want to put you on notice now. I know the committee may want to, I don't know if it's the Public Relations Committee or any other committees may want to take this up in terms of how to move forward. I've got some interviews with reporters. I'll be talking to PTO about it. I've sent this to our legislators, and although I won't be here, I will be here in my soul to make sure that I do all I can to make sure that we don't go down this path, and that we fight hard and let people know how it's going to impact our kids. So if I appreciate if you go through it and you have any questions, please call me about it. I think it lays out the argument very clearly. This was sent to Governor Lamont. As you can see, we have not heard back yet, and we'll see what the response. I did talk to our ex-mayor who's advising the governor, and I think he even told him that this might not be a good idea, but he's worked with them, and hopefully those in Hartford would look at this that have experience in the urban setting to kind of mitigate this proposal, because it is damaging to the cities. So if you have any questions, then you can please get them to me, and I'll try to answer them. And if you need any other information, I'll provide it to you.
Dr. Sell? Oh, sorry.
Kate had her hand up, and then Joe.
Dr. Sell, I just want to clarify and make sure I understand this correctly. If they freeze this funding, we're looking at 2.7 million for the next bump for next year, and then 2.7 million after that. So really a loss of over 7.5 million over the course of those 2 years that should be coming into Danbury. Is that right?
For Danbury, yes.
Okay. And when you talk about the potential of recalibrating the budget, the use of the ESSER funds, are we talking about the state basically affording permission to use it for operational purposes?
Right.
Okay.
That's what the government is suggesting.
Yeah.
In this proposal now.
But the ESSER funds are federal, right? So
well, Kate, my understanding, although it's limited at this point, because I've asked those questions, I think it's up to the state to determine that.
Okay.
No, at least we're told at this point from the federal contingent that there are no statements within that act prohibiting the use of them for operation. That was a state decision. Yeah. Okay. When you look at the purpose of it, but anyway, so the governor took took his opportunity to say that it could be used for operation fund.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that.
I thought Joe.
I did. Dr. Sell, just in line with what you said, I've spoken to both Representatives Godfrey and Arconti, both of whom were less than pleased with the notion of pausing this funding, and they were both, they were going to work to see what they could do to change this. Neither one of them thought this was remotely a good idea. So obviously we'll keep those conversations going, and I'm sure you could reach out to them directly and have that and further that conversation. But yeah, no, I spoke to both of them the day the budget came out, and neither one of them were particularly amused by that proposal.
I think the more we do that and call them, our contingent has been, no matter what side of the aisle they're from, has been going, this hurts our town, hurts our kids. Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
That was their view as well.
So anyway, call them and talk to them. That'd be great. You want me to move on, Madam Chair?
Yes. If there's no more questions, yes.
So really, C should be under the next for discussion. I guess I should be discussion. So let me just start by saying that in the beginning, when we looked at our challenge for returning the fall, our main issue was space. And that has not changed in terms of aggregate number of students if they were to return. That put us in a position to move towards a hybrid for safety. And during that time, the advice that I was following was the advice of our advisors, medical advisors. And, whether we had a hiccup there, October or not, the advice at the time, I've explained that we did what we did. Moving down at this period of time, what if we knew, then what we know now, I think the lens would change somewhat. And I had a meeting last week with our medical advisors, and I do want to go over some good news with all of you. I think the parents that spoke in the beginning of our meeting had talked about some of it in a glossary way. There's some specificity that indicates to me that as an advocate for our youngsters, that we should look at this differently. We should look at this in a way that uses the best practices that I'm finding out from surrounding towns that have been implementing this because they've been able to do it with lesser numbers of infection rates. And also, we'll be able to do what we know now about the primary transferring of the virus. As recent as yesterday morning, the statement was made, it is not regarding problematic for youngsters, it is the problem of the virus for adults. I think we've all known that, and and it's coming to fruition in ways that are going to put us in a position to do some other more aggressive returns when you couple that with the vaccines. So let me just revert back. What you see on the agenda is in-person learning. We've gone back to the hybrid, and we've gone back because of space. Right now, we've been looking at this steadily over time. We have about 228 classrooms that are over, we call the minimum, that could not achieve either 6 foot or 3 foot minimum for social distancing. And we are studying that analytically in terms of what it can mean for us in terms of increasing the amount of time for students to return. But I think it's incumbent on me to tell you as a board that we have an opportunity to gain some time. We have an opportunity to expand some time, even while we study the space utilization challenges that we have. And I want to start the conversation so you have a full gestalt of the actual infection rate in Danbury. Kara Prunty, if you could go over those numbers and talk to the board about what we have seen since we've returned, waiting out the impact of the holidays. I think that's where I'd like to start the discussion, and then we'll move on from there. Is that possible?
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Sal. Like the rest of the state, Danbury's numbers have continued to go down. So currently we're at 23.7 cases over the last 14 days per 100,000. Our positivity rate is about 4.6% over the last 14 days. So we are in a better place than we were seeing a few weeks ago even. So that's been steadily decreasing. We've been monitoring along with Kathy O'Dowd and her team, any cases within schools and quarantining and doing contact tracing, and that seems to have been very effective. So right now, community spread is still happening, but it's much lower than it was a few weeks ago.
The numbers that you were seeing, could you share with the board in terms of the collection rate and what you're actually analyzing? We're talking about the waste product, talking about some other items.
Sure. Yeah. So Danbury is now part of the statewide program where we're monitoring the wastewater and any traces of the virus within wastewater as an early indicator of what's to come in the following weeks in terms of new cases. And same thing, that's also showing a downward trend of virus being shed in the wastewater. So all around our indicators are looking a lot better.
With that, the CDC came out with some new guidelines, and one of the things they're talking about as a critical component of making sure the environment is safe is contact tracing, and to be sure that districts have an aggressive, comprehensive contact tracing. So, Kathy, maybe you could share with the board what our approach to that is, because I think that is really an important element to any returning in-person, expanding in-person learning.
Sure, Dr. Sal. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We do have an aggressive contact tracing protocol in place. It starts with the identification of a positive case, which that information comes to the school nurse. It's shared with the principal, with myself, certainly Dr. Sal and the cabinet, Dr. Fong, and Kara Prunty. So when we do have a positive case identified in the school, our contact tracing begins with who that person is, where they have been in the building, where they have been in less than 6 feet of distance for 15 minutes or more. That's the criteria for identifying a close contact. If it's necessary, we need to look at if it's a student, if they've been riding the bus versus a parent transportation. And once all that data is gathered, it is shared. The letters go out. We notify direct contacts by what we call a red alert robocall, where parents are asked to check their email immediately for an urgent COVID-19 quarantine message regarding their child. And the letters go out through school messenger so that they can be translated into Spanish and Portuguese. We do a follow-up once we do those calls for a direct contact or a close contact. We get, the principal will get back a report from school messenger who answered the call, if the call was blocked, what went to answering machine, and then there will be subsequent follow-up phone calls just to make sure and confirmed that every close contact who needs to be in quarantine is notified. And then as we ask that people stay in their quarantine and be tested, those results are then brought back to the school nurse to confirm that everyone is safe to come back on the date that's identified for them. Again, we work in collaboration with Kara, and then there's further community contact tracing on her end.
Thank you, Kathy. So the other part of three-legged stool, we got the contact tracing, we've got the, as I said, the regression of the infection, is the vaccine. And Kim, could you talk to the board about where we are with that? I think that's an important component.
Yep. So as you know, because I've been talking with you over the last multiple of weeks, we've been waiting anxiously for the governor and the State Department of Health to open the eligibility for vaccination to more of our employees. So yesterday, it's dog years, this week, yesterday, the governor opened both the category of age 65 and up and also educational sector employees. And right now what we're doing is we have run lists of basically everyone that receives a paycheck from us, and we are sorting them so that the one criteria that we do need to meet is that we need to try to focus on those who are going to be in buildings working with students. So, for example, those who are working remotely, who have no contact with students, will not go in at this time. So this is a process of going through our lists, reviewing people who are working remotely, reviewing all of our categories of employees, and making sure that those lists are as accurate as we can get them for now. We are going to upload them on Monday with Kathy's assistance and Kara Prunty's assistance. And I will say, I've been doing some fashion of this job for many, many, many more years, and I care to admit. And without those two at the helm, we were going to be sunk. Both Kara Prunty and Kathy have been magnificent through this and trying to organize the lists, trying to make sure everyone gets accurately uploaded, and then that everyone gets communicated with. So what will happen is once those lists are entered and uploaded on Monday, folks will get an automated email from the CDC that invites them to register in VAMS. And then Kathy is going to be working with me to message to our employees the quickest way, really, for folks to be vaccinated. We're looking at running some clinics in district. It's going to be dependent on supply, and that's all very much a work in progress right now. And I can tell you that these folks are on the other end of my phone calls very early in the morning and very late at night as we try to work out these details. So I will say I sent an email to all hands about a day ago, just sharing with folks that this was the news. And I will tell you, I've had dozens and dozens of emails, just folks expressing relief, expressing excitement, expressing optimism. Some people have sent me pictures of their grandchildren. I mean, I think people are really excited about this. And I think it's what's giving all of us a little bit of a spring in our step on getting this across the finish line. So I'm hopeful that in the days that come, in the weeks that come, as we meet again, I'll be able to give you some more information about how we've done with this progress. But for right now, full systems ahead, everybody's firing on all cylinders, and hopefully we're going to get there soon.
Kara Prunty, did you want to add anything to that?
I just want to add that we're still waiting on getting confirmation of when we're going to get our allotment and what our allocation of vaccine will be. So as soon as we get that information, we can spread that to you guys. And I'm just anxiously awaiting that information from the state.
What is the target amount of allotment?
Well, I would like to target to try and get all of our staff that you guys have identified for us done within the first 2 weeks. They have said that we want to be completed within the month of March. I would like to do it sooner than that. So I have put in a request to cover everyone within the district that I've been given from Kim and Kathy. But I have not received that confirmation yet. I should know in the next couple days whether we can move ahead with that and whether I'll receive that allocation.
So what I want the board to hear is that what you've been able to do, and I'm thanking you, create our own system on our own campuses. If we get the vaccines that you're requesting, could have all of our faculty and our staff, our bus drivers done within the 2 weeks.
Right, at least first dose.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. You guys have just been tremendous, so thank you.
Can I ask a couple questions? Oh, sorry, Kathy.
Oh, that's right. I was just going to ask about the April vacation coming up and people going on vacation to another state. How are we going to handle that when they come back? Mm-hmm. Is there going to be some kind of protocol for them?
Yes, there is.
The quarantine.
Kim or Kathy, who wants to?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So there is a Connecticut travel advisory, which basically states for anyone that travels, they are required to have a negative COVID test either 72 hours before returning to Connecticut, or they can test at any time after coming back to Connecticut. However, they do need to quarantine until those test results are back and submitted to the school nurse.
In terms of kind of communication, what we continue to push out to all of our employees is that my office and Jen Gonzalez in particular is our human resources specialist who has been wholly dedicated to all things COVID and to leaves of absence, absences, sick time, COVID days. So she is really familiar and works hand in hand with Kathy on that. So for anyone who has questions about it, Jen is a really good resource. Shoot an email. But right now, obviously our concern is that for those folks who do travel, we're going to see ourselves with a number of people who may be required to quarantine, and that's going to put a stress on our system for sure.
So we'll send something out. I'm sure we are getting questions about it, but I don't intend on canceling April vacation. What we've learned, the adults have been responsible. I hope they would continue to be responsible. Rachel, you had a question?
Yeah, and just not only for staff, but for families, will there be some, awareness made just in the risk of travel? But also for staff, will there be designated clinics for teachers? And also with the prioritizing within the teacher group, just wondering, like the ones who may be working remotely because they have an underlying condition, if they are vaccinated, then perhaps they could be in a building. So I don't know if there's, any thought around that.
I think, Rachel, all that is being worked out procedurally. With the advice that we've had, there'll be, there's some technical legal issues that Kim is going around, but certainly people will be more apt to come in that are vaccinated, but I think we're working through all of those idiosyncrasies. Some of it are very, very difficult personnel issues, but that's part of the strategic thinking. Let me say it that way.
Yep.
That's what I can say.
Madam Chair, I have a quick question.
Yes.
If it's appropriate.
Go ahead, Mr.
For Kim, and I will thankfully leave Kim to sort out the ADA compliance issues. In a past life, I worked for somebody who did ADA compliance, and it's a nightmare. Just in case we aren't able to do clinics for staff or do set up our own vaccination site, will staff be afforded the opportunity to use personal days or sick time or something like that to go get a vaccination if we're not able to set it up ourselves?
Right.
Or are we not sure?
Part is we're not sure. I know that Kathy and I have had conversations about the clinics not interfering with work hours. So we've been working really hard to think about how we do that in district, working around school hours so that we don't impact. We're also giving some serious thought to timing in terms of the week, because some people do have side effects the next day. So we're trying to be sensitive to that. But people will have the option of also going into VAMS and signing up with an appointment anywhere else in the state that they want to go. And we would ask that, they do what they can to avoid the work period, because we could see some significant stressors that way as well. But we haven't gotten much further than that yet.
Thank you.
So let's continue this walk down increasing in-person learning. So, I mean, this is what we're facing. I think that's good news for us. And the good news should impact our purpose of having our school system and bringing our youngsters back from all of the DL that we're having, or from the hybrid. So one of the things that we're studying very deeply is in terms of our needy group, returning them, and also looking at the day of the week that we're at this point as a best practice that we feel, because of the way we're handling our cleaning, that we'll be able to take advantage of Wednesdays. So right now, we are looking at returning youngsters back on a Wednesday to begin with, and also looking at some other days of lengthening the day so that we can increase the amount of time our youngsters are at school when they do come in. With that said, strategically, we are looking at some other options for improving increasing the number of days. Now, we have been not sitting back, but making calls around, because we keep hearing of districts that are in full in person. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I was listening to the Boston superintendent of schools for the diocesan. And we called them right up, and we really couldn't get good answers from them because what they say on the air and what's really happening all the time isn't really necessarily what's going on. I just want to say that. So what I've asked Kevin to do for me is that we've been making phone calls locally to see what's going on and to see, in fact, the best practices that are able to allow districts to increase the amount of time. Now, I will say to you that our data now is matching the data of these towns. That's why I have the interest. In the fall, it was not. We were 4 and 5 times the infection rate. But right now, we're at the same point or lower than. And as Kara pointed out, we have an opportunity. So Kevin, maybe you could talk to the board a little bit about what you've been able to, research out and compared with the kind of best practices that we're doing so I can get to the next phase of my conversation. Can you do that for me?
Absolutely. So just want to share with the board and the community what we've learned in some of the feedback and how other districts are getting all of their kids in. And there are various models. I know we've heard some of them as part of our public statements that were made earlier in terms of what other districts are doing. Originally, as part of our reopening plan, we had included in our plan 6 feet social distancing where feasible, but at the minimum 3 to 6 feet. And the 3 feet comes from the American Academy of Pediatrics. That was the minimum guidelines that they had provided. And then, of course, the CDC was mentioning 6 feet where feasible throughout this process. And so what we have learned from other districts is that they are using that 3 feet social distancing guideline as a minimum, and then that is allowing them to get up to 18 to 20 plus students in the classroom. And so what they have explained is that they have removed as much excess furniture from classrooms as possible to try to maximize that space. But however, we are learning from some of our urbans and some of our neighbors right around town as we poll them that they are getting a high number of students in their classrooms, higher than we have right now in our blue and orange cohort. And there's an opportunity now, given the feedback that we have from our architect who had done some studies for us prior in the school year. And I think we have some opportunities now to revisit our own classroom layouts, and we'll be polling our principals and revisiting those classrooms to see what the maximum number of students that we can get in all of our classrooms. But now with this new feedback and what our neighbors are doing and some of our bigger urban districts are doing, 3 feet appears to be the number that they are using as a guideline.
So just for the board and to understand, Danbury High School is the largest high school in the state. So you could talk about Norwalk, where they have 2 or 3 high schools, and Hartford has the sundry of high schools. A lot of them have space. The challenges that we're having still is just the operational of lunches and things of that nature, which impacts our schedule. So we're studying this very deeply to see how and what options that we have. We are, again, looking at the elementary in terms of increasing time. So one of the things right now that we're looking at, and I'm going to let Kelly speak to our needy students coming back. And as we start looking at our Wednesday as an option of maybe focusing on that first as we study the other days of the week and the number of students. As I said to you before, we have 228 classrooms that have over the 19 or 20. We had about 104 classrooms at K-5 that are over that 20. So we need to look at this in terms of how they can come back safely. No matter what's going on around us, we have to do what's safe. But the criteria and the best practice, the mitigation strategies for Danbury, the masks are important. We have in every class on a desk, we have those a little individual partition. Given all of that, we have some opportunities. So I'll let Kelly talk a little bit about what we're doing with our elementary, and then finish up with some of our thinking about Wednesday. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Dr. Sal. Good evening, everyone. As you know, I've spoken throughout this return process about who we've deemed the high needs special education students. And so this is a unique group of students that require more time in person to receive their instruction. Predominantly this group, predominantly, not all, attend self-contained classrooms, and the level of support and instruction that they require is best done in person. And I have to start by saying that the teachers, the staff have done an amazing job in a distance learning format on tweaking and changing their methods, coaching families and caretakers to work with this particular population. But I'm excited to be able to share with you this evening that we are looking to return them 4 days a week. I receive questions, on a daily basis from this group of parents, and I certainly understand their desire to have their children in school more. So I'm glad to announce that we'll be returning them, and we're going to stagger the start. So next week, starting on March 1st, we will be bringing in the K-5 population of high needs special ed students. And then the following Monday on March 8th, we'll be bringing in the 6-12, so the grades 6 through 12 special education students. For our preschool population, the percentage of children that we have accessing in-person instruction right now is lower, and we were afforded the opportunity to be able to bring in all preschool students 4 days a week. So I am announcing this evening. Letters, staff were made aware earlier today, and they knew this was coming. So this is not a shock. They've been planning for it for weeks, just waiting for a definitive start date. The staff, and I have to thank them publicly, are just, they lit up. They want these kids in school. They want to see them in front of them. So that was wonderful to hear. And truly their support along the way. I couldn't have done it without the team. We did meet with the medical advisors, cabinet did. We made sure that they felt in looking at all these different classrooms and the population of students that it was appropriate and safe to do so. We are very excited to be able to move forward and feel that we are doing things with safety first and foremost in mind. The notification will go out to families tomorrow morning. It's drafted and ready to go, just sitting. I wanted to be able to share it with you this evening. And I, again, just want to thank, Cabinet, Kathy, O'Dowd, the medical advisor team, the bus company, my supervisors, the special ed and related services staff. Everyone has really, really worked hard to lift this initiative off the ground. And lastly, to the parents and families that have partnered with us. They haven't always agreed with the decisions. They're anxious to have their children back in school. And certainly I understand that. And I just think it's wonderful that we've all been able to reach this point. And I'm hopeful that this will be a first step in potentially bringing more students in more often. Just the last question I know we'll receive, Dr. Sal had referenced the Wednesdays. Right now, these children will be coming in the 4 days. So that's Monday, Tuesday, and again, Thursday, Friday. If the district moves to bring in other children on Wednesday, these students would then increase to 5 days. So I don't know if there's any questions about it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know. Was there a question? I didn't see.
No.
All right. So for the board, I think, let me just say to the community, we did talk to the representative for the teachers union, and we did speak to the representative of the administrators, Christy and Aaron. And I want to go on record by saying they're enthusiastically supporting of bringing our kids back. Our teachers want our kids in front of them. They understand the value of that. And the administrators want them back as well. That attitude, that's a very positive attitude, and that's what we're working towards. So I'm studying the numbers. When I say I mean all of us as a team. I'm thinking by next week we can work out some logistics of the Wednesday as a first initial step. And we're looking at the length of the day as some options as well, so we could get something to increase the amount of time students are spending in front of teachers, with the goal of using the best practice to open up our opportunities even further as we move towards April, particularly now with the alignment of our vaccine. So, I did want to, I promised the board I'd come back at this meeting and update you. I'm really, really pleased at the way the numbers are going and the positive attitude about getting our kids back. So with that, Madam Chairman, I'm through. The all the mitigation, we have some news coming to you about the cleaning and stuff, but we're not ready to make those announcements. But keeping the facilities clean, making sure we have a comprehensive contact tracing, making sure that we have the minimum social distancing, the masking and the venting, those are all things that we have. And the money that Courtney has put into play, and the city's helped us with some of those maintenance construction things. So we're ready. We're poised to bring back kids starting as we just mentioned. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sayre. Anyone have any question for Dr. Sayre, Kelly, or Kim?
I do, Gladys.
Yes, Joe.
And I'm not sure, I think this might be for Kevin. The new CDC guidelines, that new the new four status chart that the CDC has come out with, where we seem to be infection rate wise, I think the recommendation was something to the effect of 6 feet social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Is that any different than the guidance we had before? That seems to be a little different than the old CDC guidance. I'm trying to measure that and trying to square that with the 3 foot, 6 foot dichotomy. And how do we make that work at the high school? How do we make 3 feet work at the high school?
Good question, Joe.
Kevin, I think, those are the questions that we had. And Kara, is Kara Parenti on? Kara?
Yep.
Okay, I just corroborate. Joe, what I've asked that question, I tried to read the narrative, and Kara knows we talked about it with the medical advisors last week, and maybe you could share some insights for us, Kara.
Yeah, the recommendation is 3 feet, but when possible. I mean, the best practice is 6 feet. It can go to 3 feet, and then it says basically whatever's feasible between 3 and 6 feet.
Okay. Thank you. I love the idea of trying to get kids in more times and longer days than anything else. I just wanted to see how that squared with the new policy. Thank you.
So our challenge is, as you can imagine, you got 800 or 900 kids eating lunch.
Of course.
Right. And that's why I try to tell people when they come, well, they're doing it here. We have the largest high school in the state. We got to figure out a way of doing it there safely. And then you have 2 large middle schools. So with that said, we're going to look at the best practices that's happening around us and start with moving towards this Wednesday with the idea that we can grow even further safely.
This may be an unanswerable question about the high school, but I mean, I'm assuming advanced calculus has very few students in it, very easy to socially distance that class. A class I would never have taken. But how many kids are there in the average social studies or history class or science class at the high school? Or is there not an average?
Well, because we're loading things up, there's, well, I said 228 are over the, let's say the 20
okay.
That we have 104 for K5.
Okay.
It's like 12. The high school had, was about 50 classes that challenged. And what we're learning, Joe, there's different ways how to do that. So let me say, here's something I'd like to pose to the board, and this is something I could use some advice on. At the beginning of the year, there were stringent recommendations, and we had to do this and we had to do that. One of the things that worry us very deeply are we have approximately 37%, 38% of our youngsters on DL. When we put this planning model together, there's assumptions that we have to make. And those assumptions are based on parent choices. Those parent choices produce in-person students. As we move towards a more aggressive in-person model, we may have a number of DL folks who want to return. And the original thinking was, you have to give them a window of about 2 weeks. I've written the State Department. I finally got an answer back today. And the answer was that it's a local decision in terms of how that may roll out. When I'm talking to some of these districts that even parents mentioned tonight, You know, they're telling parents, yeah, once you make that decision, you can come back if there's space safely or at the end of the quarter. We're going to have to look and review that because because of the space issue and the minimum of 3 feet, if all my kids come back, 50% of them come back, it puts us in a danger zone. Right. We can't do that. So we're going to have to look at that procedure. And to be fair to everyone, that when we move down this pathway of increasing in person, that people are going to be in line that want to come back and will not be able to get back in as quickly as they want. And I say that to you because you'll get the calls and but that's what we're faced with. Because Danbury is oversubscribed with the number of students. That was the argument we made in August. That has not changed. The only difference was, as Kathy pointed out in the parent comment tonight, you have almost half your kids home. Well, that's only if they stay home, if you know what I mean. Okay, so that's what we're working on.
Thank you.
And how are things currently, Dr. Sal, at the high school? I mean, I've heard some rumblings through the rumor mill about, not everyone's respecting the social distance, but that's only, through the rumor mill. So I'm just wondering if you've had any feedback from the high school, how things are going.
No. I will say to you, I haven't had any. Someone asked me to, you remember the thing we worried about, Rachel, with the masks? I haven't, there's been 1 or 2, but that's special cases. And the kids refusing to wear masks. That hasn't, so I haven't heard that. This is the first, I haven't heard anything from the high school. Kevin or Kara, Kelly, anything we're getting? I didn't hear anything.
Feedback I'm getting at the high school, Dr. Sal, is that things are going well there. Admins are well on top of things. Like anything else, when the kids return back to the buildings, they have to get used to the norms and the protocols and the new expectations, just like anyone else. They're teenagers, but they've been things have been going relatively well. It's been quiet.
Good.
Yeah, the high school. Yes.
Yeah, my office is at the high school, so
there you go, Kathy.
And we've had no problems.
Good.
Today, Erin Daly shared with us a survey she had done of the NEA membership that reported back that a lot of people were, like a majority of people that were surveyed, were satisfied with the masking and the distancing that was happening in general in the schools, not particular to the high school, but in general. That was some of the feedback that they got.
Well, that's good news. By and large, I think once we all got back, we're understanding the challenges, and the kids have accepted it very well, respectfully, and the teachers are feeling comfortable. I will say to the board, so the coming back in is something I got to deal with. The other thing I think is that we're going to do what this creative innovation, this disruptive innovation. We may have to have a partial hybrid going on while we have kids come back. I don't think we can have a pure system, not with the growth that you have in Danbury. So there'll probably be some mixing and matching, a creative solution. And I will tell you, we've been thinking about this creativity for a long, long time. We do have an opportunity to do something about it. So by next week, we'll be looking at this expansion Wednesday, but we'll be hopefully, maybe at the next board meeting, we'd even have better information about increasing the number of days beyond the 3 and 2. Because right now, the only way it would work would be one would come 3 days a week and then 2 days a week on and off until we can expand it safely. So that's where we're at. If anybody has any other questions, there's a good time to ask. There's a lot here, I realize that. It just takes a lot of planning. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Sal.
Well, thank you, everyone. Certainly appreciate it.
Okay. Next on our agenda, we have an information item. It's just for information. Am I correct, Dr. Sal?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Form Community Relations Appeals form. Yeah, there's a form in there just to share, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I go to the board chairperson report, do I have any committees report?
Yes, I have a policy committee.
Okay, go ahead.
We met last week, reviewed and recommended the policies that were put before the board today. I just want to thank the members, the 4 other members that came out willingly. I know it's not one of the more exciting committees. And also, again, to thank Kevin and Kelly for their help last week. I would just want to make sure we're all set to convene our regular monthly meetings, starting with March 3rd at 6 p.m. Is that doable, Mr. Walston?
Works for me, absolutely.
Okay. And then, yeah, that was it for me.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other committees report? Kate?
Yep. Thank you, Gladys. Just want to report back from the community relations. We've met twice, and I think we're making some good forward progress here. Our goal is around helping educate the community about the budget that was approved. Thank you very much to Mr. Walston, to Courtney, and to Dr. Mead for participating in those meetings and helping us move that messaging forward. So we look forward to reconvening next Thursday, and we'll be hopefully meeting with members of the community to give them some accessible information about the budget.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
That letter could be part of it, Kate. That cause letter.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Sal.
Okay. Just a discussion. We had talked about returning to in-person Board of Ed meetings at Beaver Brook. And I, had a discussion with Dr. Sal, as we had talked earlier about why at that particular time that we could not go back at Beaver Brook and have open board meetings. And some of those issues are still there at Beaver Brook. And with consultation with Dr. Sal, we sort of looked at probably having our first in-person board meeting, the very first board meeting in April. We getting our kids back into school. Everything is moving alongside the way that, that no one is getting infected or whatever. We have to stop the process again. So we're looking at going back to in-person in April, along with consultation from the health department and everything else that entails in making this decision. So I hope that the board members are sort of comfortable with that and move toward doing that and making sure those things that need to be completed will be completed. And if not, then we'll look at another alternative date. But right now, the first board meeting in April. Any questions, any discussion?
Madam Chair, April 7th, excuse me.
I think it's April the 10th, Mr. I'm sorry, Al.
Okay, I am showing on looking at the agenda, April 7th, the first Wednesday Board of Education regular meeting.
Because April, the following week would be April vacation week.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Will this be at Beaver Brook, or is this going to be at...
Good point. It might not be.
Okay, because that's a small space for...
Yeah, plus for
Right,
you.
that's what I had said, Joe, that once we work out all the details and get all the information back, and it might not be feasible for us to do it, okay?
I understand.
We may have to wait and look at another time. But, we talked about going back in April.
Okay.
First board meeting in April.
Maybe the gym at Danbury High School.
Yeah, I said that before, Al. I think that's a great idea.
Or how about the parking lot?
I want to meet the traffic going up the Danbury High School.
We could do the pavilion, yeah.
There you go.
Okay. And my last thing, I attended a workshop on February the 18th that Kay was putting out, the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think it was a very interesting workshop. I think at some point, I'll have more discussion about that. I know we have a open agenda tonight, and I don't want to keep people up too late. But, the workshops come on, line and they send them to you. And if you're interested in taking them, take advantage of them, because we all can learn from listening to other people and how other districts are doing at these K workshops. That's sort of all that I have. And if I forget anything, which I'm quite sure I did, we'll have a brief discussion about it at another time. If there's nothing else on the agenda,
Madam Chair,
I need a motion.
May I make a comment to Mrs. Prunty?
Yes, Al.
I'd like to thank her for her efforts for the vaccination program.
Mm-hmm.
I first-handedly experienced the fine job that her and her staff are doing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Al. And just briefly, I had to go over to Rogers Park, and I was intent to tell Dr. Zelita last week to get my shot, and it was arranged through my church at New Hope Baptist Church. And everyone that came into Rogers Park were just making comments as how clean the building was. So Kim, could you take that back, make sure our custodians and everyone was just saying how, you know, there's no paper on the floor. Look at, you know, and the people was coming in and out. So that goes to show you that our custodian and the staff and everybody was really doing their job to make sure that our buildings are well represented. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. If there's no other questions or discussion, we will entertain a motion. Do we need to take a break? No?
There is a separate link for the executive session.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. So we will go out and go right into, I need a motion to enter into.
So I'll make a motion that the Board of Education convenes an executive session.
Made by Kate?
Second by Russo.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Are
Yes.
we intending, do we need to come out of executive session back to public session to vote on anything? No. Okay, so this way we'll be adjourning directly from executive session, not coming back here. Okay, thank you.
Made by Kate, seconded by Ed. Motion so carried.